Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? We're back to cover the long-awaited finale to the greatest comic book miniseries of the 90s, perhaps the greatest comic book miniseries of all time. Perhaps the greatest story ever told. No, I refuse to look up the definition of hyperbole. We're looking today at ROBOCOP vs Terminator number 4. So for those who've watched the preceding videos in this series, you know that this story is awesome, and that's it. That's all you need to know. For those who haven't, I'll put a link on the end screen to the first one in the series if you like, because it is worth going back and checking those out. It's been a really fun ride, and now we get to see if Frank Miller and Walt Simonson can pay it off. No need to do an extended backstory on this one. I already kind of did that in one or two of the previous videos. The bare bones of it is that it started in the Terminator future, in which humanity was badly losing the war against the Terminators. We're actually about to lose definitively. So as is tradition, they sent back a single hero to try and fix the damage that had been done. In this case, our hero Flo was sent back to try and destroy the Terminator's source code. That kind of catalyst programming that would eventually lead to Terminators eliminating all life on Earth. And she found that source code, and it was ROBOCOP, as we always expected. Really, they should have done a better job of trying to hide it. And then we got a bunch of time travel shenanigans where the Terminators sent back some Avengers to go and right some wrongs and go save ROBOCOP. And a little while later, there was a fight between, the Terminators on one side, and then ROBOCOP and Flo and a bunch of Ed 209s on the other, with all sorts of explosions and cyborg violence. We got a brief interlude where ROBOCOP, having finally understood what the fallout of his existence was, went and destroyed himself. But Terminators sent back another party to try and change the past again. And they were successful. They managed to kill Flo, they managed to sever ROBOCOP's head, and they managed to hook him up to Skynet, thus beginning the Terminator future. And then there were what seemed like a couple of generations passed, where ROBOCOP was waiting for an opportune moment to try and strike back, and it finally came. Where ROBOCOP built himself a new body, destroyed a whole bunch of Terminators, destroyed one of their factories, and flew off on his rocket boots to go and take on the future. If there's any part of that didn't make any sense, it's just because you weren't reading it at the time. Trust me, when you're reading along with it, it doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense. It's all good anyway. So now we get into this one. Why don't we start with the cover? This is back to being one of the great ones. This is kind of a classic Walt Simonson pose, really. I guess it's kind of a basic pose, really. It's just the fact that the forced perspective really works. It's a little similar to the cover to Fantastic Four number 353. Here we've got Ultra RoboCop coming straight at us on his rocket boots with his upgraded armor, because I believe the body was made out of a Terminator. I mean, you can see the Terminator clavicles here. That's a dead giveaway. And with a backpack full of rockets. That's not a bad name for a band. We've also got our Terminator skull down here, and we've got all sorts of freedom fighters in the background. So yeah, I think this one promises to be just more silly fun. That's kind of been the main thing about this series, is that it doesn't take itself particularly seriously. You know, it's a ROBOCOP versus Terminator comic book. Like, yes, you could do that all po-faced and make it all edgy and stuff, but where's the fun in that? When you can just do some goofy shit and blow stuff up. Alright, last call on the credits. Frank Miller doing the story, Walt Simonson doing the art, John Workman doing the letters, Steve Oliff doing the colors. You can't go wrong with any of that, really. And we get our now traditional front page here, showing the number of the issue, of course, and showing a whole bunch of John Workman lettering down here. And the lettering in this case, it's going to be actually mirroring, I think, what he did in ROBOCOP vs. Terminator number 1. Okay, maybe not mirroring, maybe taking it wholesale. Yeah, that's what he did. And the first couple of pages are going to be kind of the same thing. Because we are back in the Terminator future. We're back at that same point that we were in issue 1. So we start off with, like, explosions off in the distance. That's still such a great shot. Like, everything's silhouetted except the explosion. It's so good. More explosions, smoke, more smoke, and more John Workman lettering all over the place. One thing about John Workman, when he's doing a story that has the potential for a lot of background noise, he tends to fill up the page, and it does tend to actually add quite a bit. You know, when you got the constant woomph, bracka bracka, crunch, crump, poom poom, all that, it does tend to add quite a bit of ambiance. And we're continuing with the same opening sequence we got before, with the narrator stating, "Peace will come, this is the last battle. These desperate, sweating things, these humans are almost gone." As, you know, dude gets stomped on by an HK, another dude gets fried. So this is, of course, from the perspective of the Terminators. Only something's different this time, because they are pushing the humans to their last gasp. They state here, one has worked its way into the center of the regional mind. Unauthorized activity, a danger exists. The hunter-killers move toward their prey. Then suddenly from on high, an enemy new to this time stream, an enemy armed and ready for war. As RoboCop flies in, again with his rocket pack, and starts blowing up Terminators left and right. Get a classic, like pretty much Jack Kirby pose here, which shouldn't really be a surprise. I mean, I think we noted a while back, probably at the beginning of the Walt Simonson issues I started covering, that Walt Simonson's style is basically Jack Kirby's style with the style part dialed up to 11. And we're going to get Flo come back, which I suppose could be a point of confusion, because Flo got killed at the end of the last issue. But, of course, this isn't that Flo. This isn't the one that's already gone back in time and tried to assassinate RoboCop. This is the one that's about to go back in time, because we've come around in a loop. We're back up to the point where Flo was about to jump back in time, only suddenly the cavalry arrived on rocket boots and started vaporizing everything in sight. And the narrator continues, and the course of time has changed, both on the battlefield and inside the complex the hunter-killers sought to destroy. She will not go back in time, this warrior. She will not try to kill RoboCop. She scrambles to see him. She stares in wonder at him. RoboCop, rebuilt, reborn in this terrible time. A steely angel of vengeance, pressing his attack. And the battle that was to end humanity instead brings new hope, amidst a flurry of explosions. Fun stuff, going pretty fast, I think. This is a little loose for Walt, at least in comparison to what he was doing in issue... I mean, really, in comparison to what he was doing the page previous, because this was taken straight from issue 1. You know, there's a fair amount of care in, like, the hunter-killer legs and all that. This feels like it's being done much quicker, which wouldn't be much of a surprise, I suppose. I mean, we're on the last issue of this series, and they have been coming out monthly. You know, Walt's a pretty fast artist, but at the same time, it wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of scrambling to try and catch up at the end here. Again, really, as, RoboCop stands among the wreckage and the human resistance fighters run up to see what the hell that was all about. And we get our Ultra RoboCop. This, I think, is the version of Walt's I tend not to be as big of a fan of. Like, I still like it, for sure. But he's focusing so much on speed here that it feels like he loses some precision. So RoboCop here ends up looking a little bit sloppy. And part of it is that this is not Walt working off a model, of course, because this is the hybrid RoboCop Terminator body. You can tell from the shoulders, again, those clavicles. The arms are more like Terminator arms. And I think Walt's sacrificing a little bit of detail so that he can keep up with the pace here. Okay, so later that night, everyone's trying to get some sleep. Nobody sleeps particularly easy in the future, because you never know when the Terminators are going to come knocking down your door. So this is about as easily as they can, I suppose. The only one who doesn't really sleep at all is Flo, because she doesn't know what to make of this new guy, who's, like, very obviously a cyborg. And, she goes looking for him, she finds him, and he's petting one of their dogs, and the dog is loving it. And that in itself gives her pause, because, the dogs have been trained to hate anything resembling a Terminator, which RoboCop very clearly does. But the dog can sense that this cyborg is different, undoubtedly. We finally get some introductions out of the way, because we never actually got those before. RoboCop actually asks her what her name is, because, he never had a chance to at the first time around. So yeah, she tells him it's Flo, and she's like, "Who are you? You're not human, not exactly." And he's like, "No, but I am your friend. Call me Murphy." And he's trying to tell her that she's safe, she can get some sleep. She's like, "Nobody's safe, like, ever." And he's like, no, you actually are. I'm in touch with the Terminators. They're not going to get here until 12 o'clock tomorrow. You got time, get some sleep. So she does kind of lie back against him and fall asleep. And Frank Miller's going to try and put in a little bit of a connection between Flo and Murphy that I don't know that this book has really earned, but fuck it, why not? And while she sleeps, RoboCop is left to kind of ruminate on the irony of how things turned out, about how she originally was sent back in time to kill him, and now how he's kind of traveled into the future to save her. Says he has changed the course of events, and as he thinks that, the dog disappears. Because as we previously noted, when you change the course of history, the future tends to alter slowly, giving you enough time to maybe find a time pad and jump back and change things back. But they're actually going to address it for the first time here. Whereas and already the effects of the disruption manifest themselves. The dog is elsewhere now, alive or dead. Time travel, tricky business, unpredictable. By all rights, RoboCop should not exist in this time frame, and soon as the new Matrix forms, he won't. So that's apparently the explanation for what happens when you change the future, is that there's, like a slow-moving kind of machine that eventually gets around to kind of sorting things how they should be according to the new parameters. And I mean, on the one hand, I don't know exactly that RoboCop shouldn't be here because it's not like he found a time pad in, RoboCop future and traveled to the future, changed things, and then that's messing with the timeline. Like, he got there the old-fashioned way by hanging around for probably a couple hundred years. So I guess it's up for debate whether or not that should change the future in itself, except that the only reason RoboCop's here is because Flo went back in time and affected things. If there's such a thing as a master timeline, then this timeline is starting to not resemble that, and things need to change. So the follow-up line is, time, he can't have much of it left, perhaps a day, perhaps. So, okay, we've got a ticking clock element that really is established by guessing. Because in all of human history, nobody has ever changed the timeline in this particular way, so there's no real way to know what exactly is the amount of time RoboCop has left to fix things. But again, fuck it, we're not thinking about that too much. We do that, we might as well just make this video all about quantum mechanics and forget about RoboCop vs. Terminator. I don't want to do that. Okay, so the next day, the Freedom Fighters, they're grabbing the scraps of the previous day's battles. So all of the HKs, all the Terminators that were destroyed the previous day, they're taking them, and they're going to take whatever they can use to make new weapons out of. And in the middle of shot class here, RoboCop looks up and says, "Stand back." Flo runs out of the way, and he launches himself with his rocket boots. So he detected a disturbance, and apparently what that was the Terminators decided to fire a preemptive strike using a tactical nuke. There were a few left over from back in the old days. Theoretically, they can still launch one anytime they want. Except they didn't count on RoboCop being here to fix that too. So he flies up to meet it and palms the tip of it. That's fucking ridiculous, but sure, yeah. And magnetically seals himself to the missile. Detaches his legs from his torso, and if we recall, his legs have his rocket boots. So he's going to command his legs to steer the rocket away from its intended target while his torso falls off. And that's what happens. And Walt got to draw that shit. So, okay, now we got to find out where exactly. Who knows, but, we do a quick tracking of the nuke falling to Earth and then a big old mushroom cloud. So that worked out fine. Meanwhile, RoboCop's torso is falling through the atmosphere, which, of course, he is not built to do. So he burns up on re-entry and hits the ground from, 50, 60, 70,000 feet. Get the big shot of him streaking down with the impact crater, all the explosions going every which way. Walt Simonson really has locked down exactly how to do this kind of explosion. It seems like something he can do pretty quick now that he's figured out the formula for it. And of course we get that big John Workman lettering here for a coom as he touches down. Flo runs up, she's assuming that he's going to be obliterated, but he is still somewhat intact because RoboCop built himself to last. And he tells Flo that she's got to get him to the factory now. So she is able to get him to a factory. I suppose this is a factory that has been pacified or something. It's not the factory where he rebuilt himself because he blew that shit up. So once she's got RoboCop inside, he uses his CD-ROM spike to take over the factory's processes and quickly start repairing him. Attaching on new legs, I think affixing new skin onto his face because the old skin got burned off. And Flo's watching him go, and she's starting to realize what, exactly the extent of Murphy's control over the factory is, which seems to be kind of total. And she's like, you control the junk. You can make it do anything you want to. They have tons of Terminators here. If you can build yourself a new body, why stop with one? And RoboCop's like, well, shit, that's a damn good idea. And we get in the last issue, when RoboCop was building himself a new body in the future, I said it'd be pretty cool if we got like Terminator skulls with RoboCop helmets on top of them. I understood why we didn't want to do that, but still it would have been kind of nice. But now we're going to get that. That's what all the RoboCops who aren't, singular command RoboCop get. And as RoboCop is building his RoboCop army, he's again musing about how far he's gotten away from his humanity, because he can no longer think in terms of, like, he is Alex Murphy. You know, there's no part of him anymore that was ever Alex Murphy. The only thing he's got linking him to the past is his personality, which is really just data that's been floating around in Skynet's system for the last however long. And as he realizes this, he also realizes that as a result, he is losing touch with any kind of humanity he ever had. And he can feel himself growing more and more like the Terminators. Not with the same mission to wipe out organic life, but with that same kind of cold calculation. So we get back to the Rebel camp, where the Terminators are starting to advance. And of course, the first thing to come through are the Scouts, which are Terminator dogs, or some variation on Terminator dogs. Doesn't look anything like the Terminator dog we saw in issue 3. Doesn't matter. This is what Walt wanted to draw today. And the Terminator dog gets immediately eliminated. I think that's Flo in the front line there. She's like, God, I hate those cute ones. They found us. Take your positions. They're coming. And we're going to get a sequence that kind of foreshadows the Persians out of 300. Oddly enough, it's like even before the warriors can hear the Terminators, they can feel it. The earth trembles. Yeah, that is straight Persians out of 300. Each measured step in perfect unison like a hammer blow from some angry god of thunder. As the Terminators approach it by the hundreds. Now, I assume this is largely photocopied, if not all photocopied. I think that might be the case. We've seen Walt do quite a bit of photocopying back in issue 1. He was doing it for some pretty creative purposes. Here it's, to save himself some time, but it's the kind of photocopying that is still justified because all these things are supposed to look exactly the same anyway. They're all marching in unison. So, show the leg in exactly the same position time after time. That kind of accomplishes that. And they look up, and what do they see? They see a crappy cutout in the middle of the book. Well, the drawing isn't crappy by any means. It's Ed 209. Everybody loves Ed 209. He's so cuddly. But I do still hate these cutouts. Like, what are you supposed to do with this thing? This was probably the worst one because it has to be a double page cutout. Like, are you supposed to just cut along the outline? I guess, right? But then, the fold is going to fuck it up anyway. So what's the point of this? Anyway, doesn't matter. So yeah, the Terminators look up and they see a RoboCop Terminator incoming. Like, got the skull face under the helmet and everything. And then there's more of them with, main RoboCop in the lead. And then it's a legion of RoboCops coming after them. All with rocket boots. It's the Rocket Boot Brigade. And, man, double page splash. I feel like we haven't seen that very often at all in this series. I don't know if we have, even. As RoboCop himself flies straight through, shearing through one of the Terminators. And in the background, we've got all sorts of Terminators fighting all sorts of RoboCops. It's some silly stuff. It's, again, having to be done a little bit on the quicker side, I think. But there's enough attention to detail and just, making sure that it's a fun double-page splash. Got all our RoboCops streaking in, got our explosions in the background here, got what pretty clearly seems to be a crowd in the background, or just a monstrous mass of, two kinds of robots fighting it out with each other. Oh, and I guess all the RoboCops get the RoboCop gun too, eh? That's kind of sick. We gotta cut to Flo quick because she's our connection to the human side of things. She tells Murphy to make his move, so he takes some of his crack troops and they're gonna go flying straight at the, I don't know, this is like the main Terminator Center, I guess. It happens to be in the same area that the last Rebel encampment was in. You'd think probably the Terminators would want to put that about as far away as they could. Maybe center it in China. What do the Terminators care? As long as the signal gets through. But of course, we're not worrying about that shit too much. We're just having fun exploding things. Really, you get down to it, the humans should never be able to destroy the Terminators. Whatever the source code is at this point, it's probably decentralized and it's housed, in multiple places. They've got the entire world to work with, whereas the humans, have to operate, wherever their feet can take them. But if we follow that line of logic, then the humans can't win and we don't get a satisfying climax. So we're not going to do that. Which brings us back to RoboCop and his crack RoboCop troops flying towards the Terminator headquarters. While the Terminator program is screaming in his mind, yelling, "Creator, this is madness. We are one. You are we. We can make a god of you." Again, kind of getting Xerxes vibes there. "Do not force us to destroy you," as they try to shoot them down with artillery. Back to Flo, who's about to get crushed by a hunter killer. Somebody yells, "Get clear." She apparently has enough time to yell, "Too late, keep fighting." But then it's rendered a moot point as one of the RoboCops swoops in and scoops her up. So it's still okay for the moment. Meanwhile, RoboCop and his buddies, they're flying inside the bunker. They're getting close to the source. The Terminator program's still screaming in its head, going, "Creator, you betray your destiny. You surrender paradise. We will show you. Enter us. We welcome you." So he flies in, and I guess the Terminator program kind of accesses his visual processing. Although I imagine it's more than that. It's all kind of sense memory kind of stuff. And he crashes onto a floor, naked, and he's fully human again, and his wife, Ellen, is there as well. And it says, his home, his wife, the answer to his deepest, dearest, hopeless dreams. You know, she leans in for a smooch, she's getting all up on him. He's thinking perfect, her sigh, her kiss, the fullness of her breasts against his chest, and his own long-forgotten response. So he got a robo-stiffy. And he goes on going, "But it's a lie, but it's perfect." And, you know, she's right in front of him, and she's kind of got his attention, and he's thinking, it's a lie. He will fight it in a moment. And then all of a sudden, Marie, which I guess it would be the doctor who was looking after him, and Flo show up. And both of them are dressed a little bit sexy. And he's thinking, Marie and Flo, they know even his most hidden thoughts. But of course they do. That's more than we knew. Like, the impression I got before this point was just that RoboCop was a little bit lonely and, like, missed human connections. So, like, when Flo is trusting him and stuff, it's like, man, this is nice. I miss this stuff. And it's like, no. RoboCop was thinking him some thoughts, yo. And he thinks again, because this is a Frank Miller book, so we have to repeat things. It's a lie. He will fight it in a moment. And then what he's experiencing gets interrupted by information from the field as Flo gets shot down next to one of the RoboCops. And, you know, she lies just straight up dying with a big old Terminator skull in her face. It's got a RoboCop mask on it, so it's okay now. And the Terminators are trying to sweet talk Murphy now. They're like, "Don't listen, Creator. Do you see how temporary they are? A simple puncture and they're gone. But we are immortal, eternal." And Murphy replies, yelling, "You are junk!" which is what Flo kept calling them. And then he turns into RoboCop, and he repeats, "Junk!" as he shoots his imaginary three-way in the face. See, man, this book's got everything. I don't know if you want everything it's got, but it's got it. So now RoboCop, he's out of the illusion. He's face-to-face with the central computer, I suppose. It has a fully, represented face that he can talk to, thankfully. And the Terminators say, "There is still a chance, Creator. You have penetrated us. You may command us to greater glory. We are one. You are we. We will make you a god." Except for a program that can see RoboCop's deepest desires, it should know that RoboCop doesn't want to be a god. He wants to serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. And so RoboCop tells the Terminators to shut up and die as he flips them off with his CD-ROM spike, inserts it in the input, and, I suppose, blows up all the Terminators. While we get the progressively larger die, die, die. That is getting, cartoonish, where John Workman's taken up most of this page by the end of it. And then he blows up the facility itself with the biggest die of all as RoboCop goes soaring. And with that, I suppose, the Terminators are all dead. So RoboCop has nothing left to do except to fly back to the humans and find Flo, who is still dying on the battlefield. Flo gets a nice little going away speech where she's like, "There's enough people to make another go of it, and this time we'll be smarter. We'll know what could happen, what did happen, and it won't happen again." And it's like that. That's what's going to happen. All this junk, all this metal garbage, it'll all get shoved aside. There'll be kids, the kind that laugh. You know those laughing kids, right? There'll be those. And there'll be trees and flowers. I loved flowers. And then she dies. And RoboCop says, "Sleep, my friend. You will wake in a better place, I promise." So that is most of the story told, really. But we still got a few pages left where we could wrap up a couple more things. So why don't we do that, I suppose? So victory in this time, but that's not good enough. One more trip back in time. So RoboCop found himself another time pad, and he's going to teleport back to RoboCop future. And we get a screech of tires with somebody yelling "Crazy Broad." Is that photocopied from the first one? I think it is. Yes, it is. Only the first time it was Flo teleporting back in time. Here it's something teleporting in. But no, that is a big old bag of flesh. And the taxi driver's all stammering to himself like, "You're no broad. Could have sworn I saw a broad there for just a second, but you're no broad, that's for darn sure. I don't know what you are, but I'm giving you no trouble, okay?" And the flesh bag responds saying, "Okay." So the reason there's a flesh bag is that you can't just send metal back in time. That was set up way back in the first Terminator movie. If you're going to send back anything metal, it has to be encased in flesh. Terminator's got around that because all the T-800 models were infiltration droids anyway. They were already encased in flesh to look like humans. RoboCop, I was about to say RoboCop can't do that. I suppose he could, just like craft himself a body and send it back, but that wouldn't be as much fun as just sending back a giant lump of quivering flesh. So RoboCop bursts free, get the lightning crackling off him in every direction, bursting out of the panel border. Great looking stuff. Little bit of Kirby crackle too. Man, we're going old school. Love it. And RoboCop takes off for the stratosphere because he is looking for the Skynet satellite, the original defensive system before it got hooked up to RoboCop's mind. RoboCop flies up to meet it and RoboCop blows it away. And he thinks to himself it'll be decades before it can be rebuilt, if ever. In that time, perhaps humanity will realize the danger it represents. And then time, it all catches up with him now. In this time matrix, he has won. The Terminators have been destroyed before they were conceived. He has won, and in winning, this version of him has ceased to exist as he fades away. I feel like he got a little bit more than a day, but then again, it was just kind of a rough approximation. And then we're going to cut to Flo, who wakes up in the future, and it's a happy future, where everyone dresses in togas, and they all just kind of fall asleep on the lawn. I'm down for that future, man. Togas are comfortable. It's like just walking around in a blanket. But yeah, since RoboCop changed the past, I suppose Flo is still going to get bored in the future, only the future looks completely different. And this Flo, of course, has no memory of ever being a freedom fighter, has no memory of a life of hardship. All she's ever known really is peace, which doesn't explain why she has the Mo haircut still. But if she didn't have that, you probably wouldn't know who she is, so that explains that. Or perhaps, like the Terminator future itself, the Mo future haircut is immutable, inevitable. One day, we will all say whoop whoop whoop. Oh, I guess that's Curly, isn't it? I fucked it all up. All right. Anyway, we're going to cut back to the RoboCop that belongs in the RoboCop timeline. And we're actually going to wrap up the subplot that we had previously, where RoboCop was experiencing an existential crisis. Because he's walking along when all of a sudden, like a shudder comes over him, followed by a sense of danger, and nothing's wrong, nothing has changed, nothing except a feeling, a new calm. So somehow by fulfilling his purpose in the future, the present-day RoboCop is put at ease for the first time in a long time. I can get on board with that. And he realizes he's been running himself absolutely ragged and not going in for maintenance for days, and that he is dog-tired. So it's like, I think I'm going to go into the lab and get some sleep. And then one more response from the Terminators. Why not? Says the future. The new time matrix is almost fully formed. Only one Terminator probe has the opportunity to go back. Time displacement equipment is programmed hastily. It hums to life even as it shatters. It is their last chance. It is their only chance. Back in time, before RoboCop, importantly. Hated flesh burns away. The Terminator is ready to scheme, to lay the way for its final triumph. But did it arrive soon enough? We get the awesome close-up on the Robo-Dog here. As it scans for life forms, it finds them in abundance. One comes close as a shadow comes over it. And turns out he went a little bit too far back. We get the repeat on time travel. Tricky business, unpredictable. Used for comedic effect this time. Not too often you see Frank do that. And the last line here, that last nasty little Terminator overshot its mark. And this seems to me like Frank going, you know what, Walt? You've been a good sport. I'm just going to let you have fun on this last page here. Because we all know how much Walt loves dinosaurs. And that's it. That's the end. RoboCop versus Terminator. RoboCop wins. So yeah, that was a good time. Like, it had a whole bunch of fun stuff going on. There was some great action. It was fast-paced. It kind of had to be fast-paced so that you wouldn't notice quite as much just how rickety the story is. Like, it is barely holding together in some places, man. You look at it for a second, it starts to fall apart. But it doesn't really matter because it just seems like Frank Miller and Walt Simonson are just having a blast doing this thing. I posited back in one of the previous episodes that this mini-series was a response from Frank Miller to Hollywood about all the bureaucratic red tape, about all the studio notes, about all the test screenings. And I think that response was, you know what? You can keep all that shit. Because in comics, so long as I find the right publisher, like, say, Dark Horse Comics, I can do whatever the fuck I want, and there is no budget, there are no studio notes. And if a reader doesn't like it, they don't have to buy it, and it doesn't change my bottom line at all. All the solicitations for this book were put out months ago. The only question is whether or not we need to go to reprints. I don't think they needed to go to reprints, but that would have been kind of cool. So yeah, Frank Miller and Walt Simonson proving that comics are better than movies, so long as you have the right creative team and the right publisher. And nobody minds if you get a little goofy. For this series, I'm thinking about putting them all together as a supercut. Because it did kind of take me a while to work my way through all these. It might just be easier to compile them all into a single video that people can check out if they want, even if they just want to come back to it every once in a while. This would be outside of the bounds of the normal videos I do. Because, I mean, all this material already exists. It wouldn't be that hard to just kind of slap it all together. So yeah, I think that might be a good idea. I've got a few series I could do that with. Maybe we'll make that a new regular feature. Who knows? You'll have to keep watching the channel to find out if I remember to do that. But for this one anyway, that is going to do it. So thanks very much for watching, guys. If you got this far, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe if you haven't already. And right about now, you should be seeing a link to my Patreon. If you want, you can go check that out as well. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.